Welcome back. The HSRC is hosting a big conference around the science of food and food production at the moment. Experts there are focusing on improving the development in food and on transforming food systems. Dr. Rodney Managa is a research specialist at the Human Sciences Research Council's Africa Institute of South Africa. Dr. Managa, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. When you talk about food systems, what kind of systems are we really talking about?
Yeah, good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, correct. When we're talking about the food systems, actually we are talking about the processes where we are talking about the food from being the primary production, the distribution of food, and the consumption, and what happens post-production. So when we talk about then now, the issue of transformation of that food systems is now the approach came about to make a significant actually changes to how we produce this food and how we distribute it and how people also consume the food. Also given that the food systems, our current food systems are very unstable. They are unable to provide the food security and sustainability and also nutritious food in a sustainable manner. And some of the reason is that they are very vulnerable to the economic, political, and environmental shocks. I can give the example of climate change. So this calls us, the people who are working in the food space and also those who are working in the associated sectors to transform this food system so that they are resilient, not only resilient to the shocks per se, but they are also equitable and inclusive, our food system, so that they can able to provide the livelihood and also provide the other means of economy, the economic or livelihoods to the people that they are feeding. And maybe just to elaborate more, is the issue that we have in hand is that where we are in South Africa, we still have families that are still going to bed hungry. And then we still have also the population that they are not accessing the food that is nutritional secure. So they can access food, but the food that they are accessing is not that has all the nutrition that their body requires. And then we also saw with COVID-19 that our food system were very much vulnerable to that shock, where there are many households they were driven out of food.
So, I mean, we talk about food all the time, and so much of it has been about food prices, how food prices have been so high. Essentially, that's what you're talking about. We want to find ways to produce food more cheaply. And it's not just growing the food, right? It's actually getting the food to people more cheaply. Are there some ideas on the table around how to do that?
Yes, thank you, Stephen, for that. Because when now you talk about the food prices, and then now what comes to my mind is actually the marginalized group, people who live in poverty, people who has less resources. So when that happens, they are the ones that are affected more. So, and then when we are in this food system approach, and then those are people that are in the heart of that approach, is because now we are looking at growing this food in an environmentally sustainable manner, but also taking into consideration that the food that has to be grown, it has to be grown where people also need it, so that then now when you come with the issue of food value chain, like they don't need to travel a long distance to go to find the food in the market. So whereas the market are next to people, and then also that cuts the cost for people that, because you find that when you produce your food and now when you take the production cost, but now when you take it to distance, or you have to rely on the imported food, there are tariffs that are added there, and those are the things that also make this food inaccessible or very expensive. But you touch on the issue, on the imported issue there, that are there ways? Yes, there are ways, and that's why we are deliberating here. There are ways that we can able to make sure that the food that those who are producing food, they can produce this food in a more sustainable ways or in more cheaper ways, in way that we can able to use the new technologies. And if we are talking about the food that the food that people have to produce, there are new varieties that can be they can be adapted to those harsh conditions that are imposed by the climate change. But also the issue of nutrition, the food that we are producing, there are also ways that we show that the food that people are producing, they are going to give them the required nutrients that they need. It's just that it's a holistic approach, and then we need to know the needs of the people that they are relying on the food. Like here in South Africa, we know that we rely more on maize, but if you just look at maize alone, it doesn't give you all the nutrition that you need, like a protein, for example. That's where now you have to come with the issues of diversification of production in terms of growing the legumes, crops, and also making sure that the sustainable livestock is also in place as well to provide the protein that people need. This has to be through the people themselves as well, where they are able to produce. But there are barriers that they are there. And that's where the research comes in with new methods. And also there is a need for crack the barriers that are there in terms of the regulation, in terms of the system, in terms of providing people with the resources that they were able to produce. For example, the water access, the issues of the inputs. Some of the people that we're talking about, they need assistance with those so that they can able to produce the
And Dr. Managa, I mean, you talk about, for example, people in South Africa eat maize. In other parts of the world, people actually eat different things. You have different staple foods. There are often historical reasons for this. I mean, one of the things, for example, I think many South Africans, we probably eat too much meat. I know I eat too much meat. And meat's quite expensive. It's very bad for the climate, for example, because it produces methane. It takes a lot of maize, actually, to produce meat. But changing, I mean, if you tell me that I must eat less meat, I'm probably going to fight you. So then we also need to look at what people actually want to eat. And we need to look at how we change what people want to eat, sometimes to make it healthier, for example.
Yes. Thank you, Stephen. I think when I was beginning, I mentioned the issue of the food consumption. This also goes to our eating behavior. The food that we are eating, and like you are right. Then there is issue of awareness. There is issue now of creating, understanding the change dynamics in the society, and also to be realistic as well. Like you're saying, that if you want to say that people have to consume this kind of food, and then we have to be able to say that are they able to go to with the means that they have, are they able to acquire food that we are saying they have to. And then let's provide the ways, the pathways for them to be able to have that diversify of food. And like you said, then people will be just relying on the meat, for example. But there is, actually, let me bring the issue of our indigenous food here. You will find that there are some indigenous food that are not necessarily meat, but they can also provide you with the same protein or the same nutrients that you're getting from the meat. But how do we get there? That's where we have this kind of dialogue where we are coming together with the different stakeholders, and then we are trying to find a way to say that how do we now move in with the people? And the issue here is to understand the context of where we are living with, because even in South Africa, we wouldn't want to come with an approach or a solution that would be like one size fits all. We will have to to understand that those in Limpopo, this is where, in terms of producing food, is their strengths. So we maximize on what they can able to afford. They can able to maximize on that. And then when you go to Eastern Cape, we understand what kind of food system they have and how can we diversify. And where the food is produced more, let's make sure that we are avoiding also the food waste as well, because, Stephen, there is other issue when you are talking about the people going hungry, issue of food insecurity. On the other hand, in the same place, there will be issue of food waste, where food that is produced is also wasted. So that's where this food system transformation came into place as well, where we are able to make sure that the food that is produced as well is also transformed into the other byproducts that people can also drive the value out of it, and also the food that they can eat.
So, Dr. Managa, I mean, to change what people eat can actually be quite difficult. But advertisers do this for a living, and if you look at the food industry, they spend a fortune on trying to influence what we can eat. you as a scientist may well have the best knowledge or the best ideas around what people should eat, but isn't the food industry quite difficult to change? I mean, it is unfortunately driven by profit.
Yes, yeah, you are right, Stephen, but I think I want to approach this in this way, that changing, I think the issue wouldn't be more about changing the people and what the people they are eating. There is a concept that I know now that they call it food biofortification, where the food, the staple food that are already known that this is a staple food like maize, like potato, rice and wheat, they are being altered through the biotechnology, the agricultural technology, to increase their content of nutrients. While those crops are still growing. And then by doing that, and then we make sure that we are not necessarily going to change what people already accepted as their staple, but we have actually enhanced the nutrition on that. That's one approach. And then on the other side, then we, like I said, the change also takes time. We need to understand, and we need to actually bring to people to say that there are issues that are rising, like a climate change. So for us to be able to be sustainable in terms of food security, and I can tell you that given the experience we have with COVID-19, I think this is a very good time where people can also see that if we're telling them that in the time of shocks, then we would need to have a backup of some of this intervention, and then they will be able to understand. But we wouldn't want to say as a scientist that we want to change people. We understand. And we also understand why are they consuming a lot of this food. And then we find that maybe it's because that's what is accessible to them. And that's what they maybe in terms of tradition, they are closer to that food. And then we see how we can actually bring this other aspect of either introducing the new food. But it's not like introducing the new food, but also just to understand how they can able to have all the foods that are needed by our body. And also the food, we tell them that we need to produce the food. Maybe we need to limit this production because it's not good for the environment. It's not good also for the industry, and it's not good for the future as well. And then I think if we come together with the communities and with everyone, every citizen, to understand that why are we talking about this food system, I think that's where the discussions will start. And then from there, we take one step at a time. I think we can get some.
Dr. Rodney Managa, thank you, Research Specialist at the Human Sciences Research Council's Africa Institute of South Africa. Do appreciate the time.